What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
At one time, its predecessor, the fourth-generation Mondeo, confidently fought in the class with leaders like the Camry and the same Passat. However, the fifth generation could not repeat this success. Ford's departure from our market was not the reason, but the proof of this fact. If the fourth Mondeo in the best years found 10, and even 15,000 buyers, the fifth kept at the level of 2,000 to 3,000 a year. The difference in popularity can be traced in the secondary market. If the fourth generation cars on sale on Avito at the time of writing the material was more than 1,000, the fifth, only 200. However, the decline in popularity is not directly related to the quality of the model. Ford notes that the demand of buyers is increasingly switching to crossovers, so the fifth generation Mondeo will be the last. The model did not reach the 30th anniversary and is ending its existence. However, let's not talk about sad things, especially since the appearance of the current Mondeo does not favor it either. It debuted in 2012, but taking into account the globalization and merger with the American Fusion, it took quite a long time to reach us. In Russia, the cars appeared only in 2015. At the same time, there are reasons to feel sad here too. On the long way to Russia, Mondeo in the interest of cost optimization lost everything that sold poorly in Russia, diesel engines, as well as hatchback and station wagon bodies. Only the most popular gasoline sedans came to us. Of course, the powerful all-wheel drive version, which was offered in the U.S., was also out of the question. It was important for the company to cut costs and get maximum profit, especially taking into account that the localized model was competitively priced. At the start of sales, the base sedan cost 1.15 million rubles, and the top version cost 1.5 million rubles. Of course, such prices did not last long. A year later, the price list already started at almost 1.5 million, and by the end of sales in 2019, the cars cost already under 2 million. So against the general background, 1.5 million for a 3-year-old D-Class sedan is quite a fair amount. Let's see which option is better to choose. As we remember, there will be no choice of bodywork. Only sedans were officially delivered to Russia. On the secondary market, you can find diesel station wagons imported from Europe, but we will leave their purchase to brave and experienced enthusiasts. Body condition of the cars, taking into account the age from 2 to 6 years, is expected to be close to excellent. It is too early to talk about problems. However, characteristic operational defects can already be noted. For example, the trunk lid often touches the bumper in the lower and side parts of the opening, and the paint in these points is quickly wiped. In addition, it is worth closely inspecting the junction areas of the bumpers with the fenders, especially at the rear. Here, too, the parts can come into contact, peeling off the paint from the fenders, damaging the galvanization and causing corrosion. Underpainted dots in this area are not a cause for serious concern, but experienced owners repainted the diseased joint completely, protecting it with a transparent film. The repainted hood and replaced windshield are already features from the category of operational, as well as chips on the edges of the arches, which are also quite common. Otherwise, despite the rather fragile paintwork, the cars are well preserved. From the point of view of body repair of Mondeo, unification with the American Fusion has undoubtedly benefited, which facilitates the work of manufacturers of non-original parts. The assortment cannot be called the widest, but there is a choice, and it allows to save a lot. For example, the hood can be bought for 12,000 to 17,000 instead of 35,000, the front wing for 5 to 8 instead of 14, and the front bumper from 4 to 6 instead of 30 to 50 depending on equipment. The windshield is also available with double savings. Without heating, it can be bought for 10,000 instead of 20, and with full heating for 25 instead of 50. Except that diode adaptive headlights spoil all economy. If usual halogens are available for 13,000 to 15,000 even in original version. Diode optics costs under 100,000 and is only original. However, foreign dismantling shops can help here. There are few such cars in Russia, but there are plenty of them in the world. The change of generations brought the Mondeo a new CD4 platform, which, however, grew out of the previous CD3, retaining the suspension schemes, but receiving their fresh design. McPherson remained in front, and the redesigned rear multilink arm has got an additional vertical lever. The resource of suspension is quite good, but to maintainability it is possible to pick on. Here there are decisions, because of which cars from Ford consider expensive in maintenance. The most obvious is the front L-shaped lever, which is not disassembled and is changed only in assembly with a ball bearing and a rear silent block in a separate cage. And if you can buy a non-original silent block for $2,000 to $4,000, then the ball bearings cannot be found. Of course, the lever assembly can be bought from $6,000 instead of $12,000 to $15,000 for the original, which in general is not very expensive. But those who are used to changing ball bearings on bolts for 400 rubles will be disappointed. At the same time, the rear non-large levers are inexpensive, $2,000 to $4,000 for the original, but they are 3 pieces on each side, which makes a complex reassembly not cheap. And for a large lower lever silent blocks are not offered as standard, while it costs 15,000 to 20,000 rubles in an assembly. Stupanel bearings are expected to be changed only in assembly with a hub unit, which costs from 6,000 to 8,000 for a non-original. Option shock absorbers with adjustable rigidity, which will cost 20,000 to 30,000 for a piece against 7,000 to 8,000 for usual ones, can finally empty your wallet. However, it is not necessary to be frightened and to write down the running gear in unbearably expensive. First of all, everything is not broken brakes of the large sedan got simple, with single-piston disc mechanisms with a floating bracket around the circle. On station wagons it was possible to meet front brakes with increase to 316mm discs, but on the majority of cars it is discs on 300mm in front and 302mm behind. Prices for consumables are adequate, 5,000 to 7,000 for the original disc and from 2,000 to 3,000 for non-original, and decent pads are available for $1,500. Much more investments can require a steering rack with an electric booster. The rack itself can be reassembled, but the problems with an electric part, and also a drive belt, which itself costs 6,000 to 10,000, will have to be solved with the help of repair. Prices even on the restored complete rail are not very humane, 60,000 to 90,000, and a new one will be even more expensive. So, in addition to diagnostics, you should rely here on a test drive, which will help to identify snagging, jamming, and other symptoms of amplifier malfunction. If we talk about Mondeo gearboxes, there are 2 pieces of news, good and bad. The good news is that power shift robots were not offered in our market. All motors were combined with a classic hydromechanical automatic. And the bad is that the automatic with Index 6F35, created by Ford together with GM, cannot be called a model of reliability and smooth operation. In operation, it sometimes grieves owners with a logical and jerky manner of switching, but it is not so terrible. But the sensitivity of the box to cleanliness and temperature of oil and tendency to active contamination of this oil, including wear products of torque converter locking linings, is an unpleasant feature. So much so that aggressive driving and poor maintenance can finish the box already by 120 to 150,000 kilometers. Besides, automatic transmission likes warming up before a trip and smooth starts from a place. This automatic was put on many cars of the brand, including the Cougar crossover EcoSport, so the ideal oil change schedule has been determined by experience to be once every 20 to 30,000 kilometers. Beginning problems, manifested by jerks and jolts during shifts, can sometimes be postponed by oil change, but usually at least torque converter repair and hydroblock flushing are needed. In general, it is worth laying down money for diagnostics of the box, check it on the move and do not save on maintenance, but still have a reserve for a rainy day. And it is also worth clarifying whether the car participated in the recall campaign in 2020. They fixed a problem with the selector cable that could cause the car to spontaneously drive off the road. But the Mondeo situation with engines is even better than with gearboxes. As we already know, only gasoline engines were sold in Russia, and there were 2 of them, a 2.5-litre atmosphere engine with 149 horsepower and EcoBoost of 2 litres in 2 variants of forcing, 199 and 240 horsepower. In the figures of power, adjusted to Russian tax norms, localization, and attention to our market shines through, especially taking into account the fact that EcoBoost is suitable for chip tuning. However, the main emphasis was initially made not on it, but on the atmospheric engine, familiar from the same Cougar. It is now equipped with 3/4 of cars on the secondary market. And it is also good news, because this motor with marketing name Duratec is a representative of not young family L of joint development with Mazda. Age in this case means simplicity of design and good resource, and indeed, cast iron liners in aluminum block, successful chain timing, and simple distributed injection promise at least 200 to 250,000 before overhaul and small operating costs. Of course, the motor likes good care, correct cooling system, clean sealed intake and quality oil. But it still forgives more and asks less than the supercharged EcoBoost. They are also not marked by congenital diseases, but the volume of potential investments here is higher. Direct injection will not empty your pockets when repairing. The fuel injection system costs 12 to 17,000 for non-original or 25,000 for firm, and injectors will cost 5 to 7,000 per unit. But the complete turbine costs more than 30,000 for a non-original, and the original one will be at least twice as expensive. Phaser regulators, which are here both on the intake and exhaust, it is another 10 to 15,000 for each. In addition, these motors are hotter and more sensitive to maintenance, although they are adapted to 92 gasoline. However, those who want to get from Mondeo also dynamics, supporting their desires with money, may well look for a supercharged version. But the most practical and economical in the long-run purchase will be the freshest Mondeo with 2 5-litre atmospheric engine in a good configuration and from the first-second owner, about like this if Autoteca will confirm the honesty of the mileage and accident-free history, and diagnostics will not reveal serious problems with the engine and suspension, then such a Mondeo can be driven for another 3 to 5 years, spending only on quality maintenance, including the gearbox. And after years, an important task will be to find the same balanced automobile. In fact, Ford will give a head start to many classmates in handling and other driving qualities. In conclusion, the Ford Mondeo V offers a compelling blend of atmospheric performance and automatic convenience, making it a strong contender in its class. Priced at $1.5 million, it presents a unique alternative for those seeking something different from the ubiquitous Camry. With its stylish design, spacious interior, and advanced features, the Mondeo V could be the perfect fit for buyers looking for a reliable and enjoyable driving experience. Ultimately, the decision comes down to personal preference and priorities, but if you're after a distinctive vehicle that stands out from the crowd, the Mondeo V is certainly worth considering.